Morning, councillors. Meeting reconvened at 10:41. Okay, we'll resume our conversation around agenda item 3116, Register of Commercial Statutory Cost Recovery Fees. Bearing in mind, councillors, I haven't closed debate on issues that have already been amended, so councillors reserve the right when we go to formal resolution to debate any issue. We're working through these in a piecemeal approach. We will now direct your attention, please, to community facilities. Thank you. Showgrounds. Now,
Mr. Mayor, just before we do back on property,
yep.
just see Haramac Bakery's got a $300 a week rent. I think that should be put out for theirs per tender.
As per what, sorry?
Tender. I don't think you can get anyone to rent for $300 a week at Haramac. Commercial property.
Yeah, so last year it was just negotiated.
Yeah, I think it should be left as negotiation.
And well, if you're going on last year, the shop was the same.
All of Haramac.
Yeah. So, councillor, what are you suggesting? The community care service stays as is listed, councillor. That is a recovery. Councillors' objections to, so that's a proposition by Councillor Henson. Councillor Rogers?
I think that's fair enough.
We haven't got a tenant, so
No.
in terms of attraction, who knows whether it's too much or
I was looking
not.
at that earlier and thinking that it might be a bit much to a bakery.
Councillor Plum?
Yeah, I think there needs to be something like that on there.
Yeah, as negotiated.
Yeah.
Councillor Arthur? Councillor Gleeson?
As negotiated, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
As amended. So that will be, the next amendment, Debbie, will be reverting commercial property charge. Can you use that? Yeah. Right. Are we finished with property? Then, if we may go to community facilities or showgrounds. I'm going to ask Samad and Jenny. Jenny, were you involved with Samad trying to come up with this? Can I'll just revert back to the last workshop. We looked at, asked the officers to look at introducing a charging mechanism that was applied at the point of power consumption. However, and now I'm going to go, Jenny, the complexity of doing that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I had a discussion with Samad after the last council meeting around that particular issue. And, well, first of all, we've got to meter every building over there, which is gone out to get a price for. But it was also mentioned that it would be a minimum of $20. It would cost us more than $20 for a staff member to go and read those meters, and especially if it's a facility that's being used on a Saturday and a Sunday, so even if it was a Friday, Saturday and a Sunday by different organisations, to get someone to do that between each of those is a minimum payment of $3 if it's after hours. I just thought that if we could come up with a simple method of, like, for a major, minor and a seasonal fee, that would be easier. And I don't think it's an exorbitant fee, it can be juggled. Did discuss it with Paula and them as well, because I think Alpha already had a similar fee system in place around that major minor function. I just thought the logistics around trying to get these meters read was going to be worth more than what we were going to recover. So to me, you might as well have just made all facilities free. So this was an alternative option.
So that's in relation to hiring on an event basis. We were still investigating, Jenny, the installation of meters on those buildings that are leased, like, for example, the football club or the Crooks Club. That may still happen.
Yes. To Ms. Mayor, yes, that is still going to happen. We will still get those installed, and the electrician is going to give us a couple of alternatives, because to do a full, by the time we actually did the list here in Barcall, if you were going to individually do everything, we were going up over 30 metres, which was going to be quite exorbitant fee-wise. So that's when we sort of had this discussion around coming up with this mechanism, where if we do it so that we just want buildings done, because we've also got to take into account the many camping caravan sites, where do you add that to their usage? You go onto someone that could be being charged for, it was going to be logistically very difficult. So I've now reduced that list down so that we can at least capture the leased buildings and the others as a cumulative, like, so the grandstand, kitchen, dining area and amenities in the barbecue area would all be on 1 metre rather than having to do the grandstand, kitchen, the toilets, the kitchen, the bar, everything individually. But we would still go to like just doing the football clubhouse, the fitness centre, those that have got the exclusive use and leases over them individual.
Right. So the couple of issues to look at here is what's been identified, and then I want to highlight for you in the grey box the showgrounds 50% charge for local residents and groups. So the fee that's proposed for a major function uniformly is $140. A local resident and group will pay half that, as is presented. Right, comments? Let's go. Gate is open. Who's first? Councillor Arthur.
On that, Mr Mayor, the 50% reduction doesn't apply to the lighting. It's only the hire fee, isn't it?
That is correct by way of interpretation, but not as is presented, to be fair.
No, that's why the question.
So certainly is the intent, but realistically, anything that appears underneath that box theoretically should be discounted by 50%, but in current practice, they're actually charged on a full cost recovery, they're charging that full fee.
That's true.
The 50% refers to basically everything else. Well, no, not really. The bottom 2 lines, Jenny, race course training 1 to 10 horses, 10 plus horses, that's not discounted either, is it?
No, to Ms Mayor, sorry, I actually didn't take close looking at that wording there, 50%. That 50% would only be for the functions. So your major functions, your minor functions, and the seasonal and sporting activities, I'm not really sure about, because $200 for a season, if they were to use it, 15 times a year, $200 is quite reasonable.
And that would be in place of the 140 per event. So if you're a football club and you have 4 fixtures, you'd play 200 at the start of the season, and that covers you for training plus your games, but you wouldn't then pay separately $140 per home game.
No.
So should we highlight the ones, Mr Mayor, that it applies to?
Can we just quickly run through them? So I would suggest a 50%, Jenny, you would say would apply to the major and minor function, and major and minor under Aramac, major and minor under Barcaldine, showgrounds building, maybe not.
That, to Ms Mayor, no, that's showgrounds building, that should be, that's the clubhouses, so no, not to that.
Oh, I
So
understand.
those,
Sorry.
and we probably should per annum, that they're per lease agreement though, so we probably should include in there per annum, per lease agreement, per lease. The storage sheds and the showground buildings, they are lease agreements.
So would I suggest here a formatting option here, Shane, that we asterisk those where the 50% applies, remove it from the header and then introduce a note at the bottom. So no, there's no objection to anything that we've just said. So if council are all in agreement here, we don't need to amend this, we can just adjust the formatting order. Okay, so in that section, well, hang on, let's go back to the start. Full.
Sorry, I'm unable to do that.
Well, I can. Luckily, I'm still the boss. Community halls, let's work our way through them and work on this 50%. We'll asterisk those that we're in complete agreement with from the very top of this page down. So, full facilities, is that a 50% discount for local residents and groups? Full facilities and community halls, Jenny, is that the way that was intended? Is that the way it would be interpreted now?
Yes, because, to Ms Mayor, that 50% heading was actually included up where the bond is, so it's been actually moved out of there looking at this whole document now, which it used to be just a top heading. It's been moved down to each category. That's
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this was a top heading in previous budget where the bond is just over that. Local non-profit organizations have free use of facilities, no commercial organizations. not charging a participation fee and operating of the community benefit, have free of use facilities. So, and Barkey Regional Council residents pay 50% of the fee. So, but I think it was,
It doesn't apply to everything, that's the thing. It doesn't apply to the lights or the season passes or so we've just got to tease out. I think we're going to be in complete agreement here. I think this is a no-brainer. I just think you need to we just need to adjust the formatting, not amend the resolution.
Formatting.
I think. So, community facilities, when someone comes, if a local resident comes and gets one of our community halls, they are going to pay half the 271, is that right? We're all good with that?
Yep.
So asterisk it, first one. If they use the same thing for less than 5 hours, we're going to halve that as well?
Yes.
Someone say no, because I'm just going to keep going. Weekly hire, a local resident or group, same thing. So that might be a mother's group that use it, perhaps, like that would be the town hall in Aramac would be one of the few that I would think would have consistent weekly use. They'd pay half that 426.
But isn't that for a week?
Oh,
The unit, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor.
oh.
The unit says week, so if you want to book the Shire Hall Monday to Friday, that's how I interpret
You know,
it.
you'd be right, sorry. I'm thinking of a consistent thing. The hall, the kitchen and the supper room, you get that at half price. You don't get the setup fees discounted, the tennis courts as a light charge. We've already identified within showgrounds. The rec park, both of them. 50% discount if you're local.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, with the rec park, the fact that their kitchen's been leased out, can we actually rehire it anyway? Because we can't really hire out something that's already leased.
Valid point. Oh, it's
What does the
2 years.
Yeah, so.
what does the lease actually cover though? Does it cover the deck and the
Jenny?
grassed areas?
To
Or?
you, Mr Mayor, no, it covers the building. They maintain the rest of the facilities, but that it is just the clubhouse, just the canteen, basically. The rest is still there for public use.
And then if we put a shelter over the deck, does the building then become the clubhouse and the covered deck?
To you, Mr Mayor, it says the kitchen and canteen area in the lease, so it's really just covering that part of it. The rest is still public access.
Oh, it's a bit of a difficult one to even hire. Like, even if you said I want to hire the whole thing for the Australian Water Ski Championships, that canteen operator's still got to be allowed to be there because we've got a lease.
They've got a use,
agreement
they've got a right of use.
So,
We'd have to take out full facility in hire.
well, it could be, so we've got to draw a line through the first one. It can't exist.
To you, Mr Mayor, if we leave it there it's just if the lessee was to actually terminate their agreement and the building was left empty.
Okay.
Like it's
Before the end of the
yeah.
Oh, I reckon we take it out, and if that happens, Jenny, we put it back in. And then the second one, the full facility hire, and in brackets, excluding clubhouse. That way, if someone wants to have an exclusive event there, you know, like the Australian Water Skiing Championships, and they don't want other boats on the water,
excluding canteen.
yeah.
Excluding kitchen and canteen, Mr Mayor. And
What did I say, clubhouse?
Canteen area.
And so do we want to make the deck available to be hired, Mr Mayor? Like, so if you want a birthday party and you want to hire the deck, but benefit from the facility of the canteen.
How do you hire the deck exclusive to other people that might access? That's my only trick, is how do you...
Well, is it any different to the showgrounds? Like, if you don't hire it and somebody else is using it, then
All I guess is, if you hire it and there's a business operating behind the bit you hire, how do people get to that? without going through the bit that you've highlighted. I don't care either way. Yeah, if councillors think it's possible, do we put a deck charge on that?
I don't know, I think the deck's more. So doesn't everyone use the deck to eat what they bought from the canteen? So wouldn't it be up to
Yes,
the
that could be
canteen
why
to
I-
reserve some tables for someone?
What about if the school formal wanted to be held there though?
Or wouldn't they reserve that from the canteen? Like, wouldn't they say the lessee?
Is that their money?
Only if
or
it's
outside?
specifically in their lease, like if their lease says kitchen and canteen area, if we haven't defined the deck as the canteen area,
That's ours.
then it doesn't include the deck.
They may be the booking service for it, but we'd be the revenue collector.
So they're really a takeaway service.
Well, no, you could have the school formal there and they would still get benefit of us having the formal there by hopefully catering for the formal.
Yeah, like if the deck is not really classed as part of the lease, they haven't got any room inside there to serve meals, so really they're basically a takeaway service, so people don't get food and eat it on the deck, which is like right there.
You can also bring food from elsewhere to there
Yeah,
currently. Can I just say, we probably need to get a bit of clarity about that exact point. We'll come back to it. This can be reintroduced at any point, it's just adding a new fee. Well, for now, full facility hire brackets exclude kitchen/canteen. We're removing the clubhouse facilities hire. We're going to check on what we can do around the deck in charge of hiring. The Globe,
Mr Mayor,
yes.
just on that full facility hire, that's the whole thing, and and for how long is that? Is that that's per day, $250 a day presently?
Yeah.
And then you look at one of our halls is $270. That's a big facility for $250. I'm not saying, I think we need to get it out there and let people see it and think, yeah, this is a good facility, but down the track, I think that $250 is probably a bit light for that whole. Leave it as is now, but
No, I think you're right.
$270 for a hall and $250 for that whole facility out there is
And is that a 50% discount?
Councillors, we're going to need some more advice on this. I've just thought of another contractual issue. So let's just say the Australian Water Skiing Championships do hire it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, this is very theoretical because this business probably wouldn't do this because it'd be managed because they've got exclusive access to an event in terms of food. But if there's a gate applied, so you're charged to access the Australian Water Skiing Championships, right? They put a $5 cover charge on. There's a business that we've leased, as you just said before, Shane, and as of right, access to that for the members of the general public. For the period where that water skiing championships is on, the public that don't want to pay to go to the event just want to go and utilise that go and So to what degree would a exclusive hire of the facility in its perimeter affect our contractual obligations? I think we need to get advice on this and then we can perhaps amend the fee to hire the facility commensurate to the fact that we might even have to financially offset. I mean, you think of the money they're going to make out of having it there. It would only be if someone got a little bit argy-bargy around the edges of a contract, but that could happen.
probably should have made allowance in some of these things in the lease agreement too.
And perhaps it has been. Let's just have a look at the lease agreement in
I haven't
context
seen
of
it,
this.
so I can't comment.
Let's just let Jenny work with Shane on that. We'll come back to the next meeting. It's not going to be a biggie. You want to see the 250 day stay 250 council, or do you want to put that up to 300?
I'm happy to leave it there at this stage, Mr Mayor, but I think down the track it'll go up.
Right.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor. The showgrounds, you jumped through them reasonably quickly. All the lights, all the electricity charges are not 15%,
No.
but all the other charges are.
Except the season sporting activities. So we went through them, but I'll do it again. Major and minor functions are the only things that are discounted.
Yep.
Literally.
Yep.
So there's 6.
Racecourse hire and the training fees and that, they're not discounted.
Correct.
Right, thank you.
The Globe,
Did you cross out that facility hire?
yes.
Yeah.
The Globe, asterisks all bar the tower entry. That's right. To 50% for local residents to hire the gallery. for a function or an exhibition and the courtyard per function, discounted. All good? Right. That's the only thing that applies that 50% discounting to. So we're comfortable with that? No disagreement? Right. Now, are you happy with the fee that is proposed? Let's use some examples here, Jenny, to test this. So, if I'm running a agricultural show in Barcaldine and I hire the facility for 2 days, I will pay the major function fee discounted by 50%. So my charge for that facility, not including lights, will be $70.
For 1 day, per function, so yeah, that's for the 2 days, the whole of the function, so we went for a week, yeah.
If I'm running a 3-day camp draft at Alpha, I will pay 50% of the major facility, major function, so I will also pay $70, not including my light charge. Okay. And as part of our community support policy, council groups could ask council to waive our charges. That's the scope. Is that within that scope?
Yeah.
So in lieu of financial support, they might say, can you waive that $70? And the other, if I am a the cricket fraternity in Barcaldine, the only place we have a solid cricket, and we're going to have 4 or 5 fixtures, I would be charged as the group that runs that, $200 discounted by 50%, so I would pay $100 for seasonal access for Friday night fixtures.
Excluding lights.
Excluding
All
lights.
this is excluding lights.
And if I'm the Barcaldine Senior Rugby League or Junior Rugby League, who owns the building?
Both have a building.
Okay, so if I'm Barcaldine Rugby League Incorporated, I will pay the $200 discounted by 50% for a season of football, but I will also pay $204 to have exclusive use of a building at the showgrounds.
And a storage shed,
Excuse
Mr
me,
Mayor.
Mr Mayor, we did not tick seasonal sporting activities as 50% off.
Right, sorry? You're right, we did not. So it stays off. So, sorry, the cricket club, to go back to that example, will pay $200 for the season for 7 or 8 weeks. Rugby league will also pay $200 for the season, but they will also pay $204 if they wish to maintain that exclusive access to that building. So their annual charge from council will be $404, which they could also seek to have waived as part of our in-kind support for them. They'll get the bill, but
To Ms Med, that would only be for the seasonal sporting activities. We don't waive their lease fees because we have lease agreements in place, which we would have to look at the wording around if there was a CPI increase applicable to those annual leases.
right.
For them and the storage shed, because they have a storage shed too.
So there's one that's not there, and it's the race course. What do they pay for a race meeting?
To me, that would be a seasonal sporting activity, Mr Mayor.
Okay, so they would pay $200 a year for their 6 or 7 race meetings.
Plus they pay for a showground building because they've got buildings there that are exclusive use, like your jockey's rooms, the tote room.
So they'd be the same as
They've got
rugby
a
league.
lease agreement as well.
They pay $404.
Yes, Mr Mayor.
And currently they would only pay the $204 because they have been exempt from charges for utilising the race course. Is that right?
That's right, Mr Mayor.
Okay. Tom, so, councillor, please. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're right, Mr Mayor. The storage sheds, well, so, showground buildings, you mentioned Alpha Camp Draft there a while ago, Barcaldine Camp Draft. We'd have to pay for those showgrounds buildings. We're only paying for the grounds, aren't we? Or is that grounds
If you have exclusive access to
event? That major event, does that cover the showgrounds buildings?
Not if you have exclusive access to them.
No, we haven't. We as in a committee, we haven't. got exclusive access.
Then you wouldn't pay to access to buildings, you only pay the function hire. It's only where, for example, rugby league or racing or Westec have got a lease agreement to have control of a particular building. They pay that as an annual fee, and then there's a function charge. So if the campcraft doesn't have access to exclusive area, then they only pay the per function fee. Plus lights.
Mr Mayor, we've all got to put on 2 or 3 hats. We've definitely got to look at power bills for, in the future. In the future, we've got to look at the amount of power that gets. We all want to go there and use it for nothing, but on the other hand, somebody's got to pay for the power. But I'm agreeing with what you're saying. Thank you. And I know what you're talking about, and I agree with what you're saying. But in the future, we have to really look at power.
I've worked through a number of scenarios. Does anyone want to propose a movement in the dollar fee, or are we moving on? We're moving on.
Oh, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. It's, the first part is more so a formatting. Can we have it in the same order? Like say major, whatever the order is, major function, minor function, seasonal, lights. Because then the next one we go lights, seasonal, major, minor, lights, major, minor, seasonal. It's an aesthetic thing, plus it's just.
Well, the thing is, there's a consistency. The major, minor and seasonal sporting activities is the same charge in every area. It's the same fee. It doesn't need to be separated out under the 3 different areas, realistically.
And Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor, did you have an explanation for that?
Mr. Mayor, I agree. We can format in a way that just take out major and minor function and put it under 50% and the rest can, so we'll format that in a way that.
You're just looking for ease of reading it, so.
And
Formatting's not hard.
through you, Mr. Mayor, if you're seeing, I can see that all.
Yeah. And the second part, Mr. Mayor, was, does it need to be broken down? Should we just not have, like, if we're going to charge the same, should we just not have for showgrounds areas, major, minor, seasonal sports? Lights are a little bit different because they're different in alpha. But all the areas that are consistent, so storage shed and a showground building, can that not just be across, whatever is across the regional area, if it's the same charge, have those in showgrounds? Because say if a sporting group does want to build a sporting shed in Alpha or Jericho or Aramac, we don't have a charge for it, the way that is set up. So that if they get a grant to build a U-Butte shed, we've then got to come back and say, we've got to add that in, or we can't charge them until we do.
The fourth last line, that showgrounds building, is actually it shouldn't be limited to purely to Barcoolan because there are 2 in Alpha. Yeah. There's the men's shed and the pottery group.
And that's, I mean, it probably condenses it if we just have regional showgrounds, major, minor. If our intention is to charge the same, then we just have those listed, and then the exception will be the lights, because we charge them different in the Alpha area compared to Aramac and Barkey.
We have a charge there, but we don't charge because 90% of the lights are run by self-generation.
Yeah. But we shouldn't have a regional charge in there of $23 a night if we know full well that we're not going to charge $23 a night for Alpha because it's provided by the community group. And then maybe we just have a separate area in there for the Barcoolan racecourse, so that covers the hire by non-locals, the hire by local, and the trainers.
I think all your suggestions are good, Councillor. We'll look at that formatting as this is, because we're not actually changing anything, we're only moving the deck chairs, so
It's just formatting.
we'll fix that. Okay?
To Mr. Mayor, sorry, Tanya. To Mr. Mayor, the Director of Works has also just pointed out in that racecourse training, it goes 1 to 10 horses and then 10 plus horses, and it could be how people interpret that. Should it be 11 plus horses? So 1 to 10 you pay $2.25, and 10 and over. The Director of Works, it made sense to us when we did it, and it still makes sense to me, but to other people it may not. So if that's 11 plus,
11.
Make it 11.
11 and over.
11 and over. Yep.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that was going to be the next part, and District Manager Lawrence has got in, should that be 11 to 20, 21? I don't know the numbers of the horses,
No, I reckon 11 and over is about consistent. That's the divide. I think once you get over that, unless, I think if we were to see down the track, my personal opinion, a satellite stable with 30 or 40 horses, which physically don't know where you're going to set it up in Barcaldine, but if they were to use that many horses to utilise our training track, then I think 11 plus is the trigger. There's a couple of private people that train 1 or 2 or 3, and then there's a couple of commercial people who are training, 18, 19, 20. But there's not 40 and 50 in any one stables at any one time. I think, Jenny, in your research that would have been the trigger that you'd have found when you were setting that level in the first place, sort of the 1 to 10, and then there's 10 to 20 is about the right number for the next group.
Yeah.
But in your hands, councillors, if you want to introduce another fee.
It might be something to look at for next year. Just so that provision is there. Like, we do it for a lot of our rating categories, for categories that, well, in the next 5 to 10 years, are probably never going to be used, but the provision is there.
All right, further on in Register of Commercial and Statutory Fees, I'm not aware of anything that hasn't been discussed ad nauseum or very quickly glossed over. I do want to remind you around town adjustment and bull levies. Oh, that needs amending. Bull levy is now only applicable to, as per our workshops, to Aramac. Our Barcaldine have been removed from that. That's correct, officers? And councillors, that's consistent with your recommendations when we were developing the budget?
And through you, Mr Mayor, that communication gets delivered to the respective
Common Committee.
Just so that they've got a really clear understanding of why that has changed.
Yeah, I think that would be important for the CEO or the district manager for each area where that affects. It doesn't affect Alpha Jericho because it was never applied, but for Jenny and Paula's respective areas, just to communicate with the common committees around the change and how we intend to deal with the recovery of that. So from memory, the committee would buy the bull and then we'd divide the bill and bill the rate, bill the users. Is that how that was going to work? And if they fail to pay, well, they're a debtor and they're kicked off. Is
That is right, Mr Mayor, but it was no formal resolution, I guess, and that's why I haven't sent letters out to all the people on the common, because it was actually just done in a budget workshop.
Yeah, correct. So
I think it needs a formal resolution to make it formalised.
Okay, we're introducing the bull levy charges today. July meeting, can we have a report on that, please, to authorise the mechanics of how we will work that? It was certainly that way, to my recollection, that we would facilitate the billing for the common users.
Yes.
The payment and the billing, but not collection of the levy. The levy would be, we just recover what it is.
I wrote my notes just on the piece of paper was that council would purchase the bull, and if the bull was 6,000 and 5 people had cattle on the common and they had 5 cows each, they would pay, it would be divided pro rata between everyone who's got cattle on the common and what they have as breeding stock.
Yep, that was my recollection. But let's have a formal report on that. That's a operational thing, so we'll report on that.
Frank, you to me, levy, you don't seem to see that on the coast.
There's something else usually comes after bull.
So, excuse me, Mr Mayor, are we changing,
But yes, we have to take out Munnabara and Barcaldine on.
so leaving Aramac?
Correct.
Right.
Councillor Peoples.
Mr Mayor, I'm not sure if there's just been an error here, but in last year's budget, it's got cattle $4 a head, and it's $4 a head here, but if you recall, I think it was in July or August last year, we had a resolution that Hanson, Plum, Rogers and people supported to take that back to $3.25. We had a motion after the budget meeting that those cattle prices would be $3.25 and the horses $4. But I'd say that when putting this budget together, that figure's just been transferred across from the old budget into this budget, and that resolution that we passed has probably been missed.
Very good, Councillor.
a can of worms, Mr Mayor.
Actually genuinely thought it was going to go through. Someone's spotted it. Hey, Councillor Gleeson, you weren't going to mention it, were you?
My personal opinion, Mr Mayor, is the rate should go up. You won't get $4 adjustment anywhere in Australia.
However, the vote has been held on this. I'm not going to revisit it. Councillors will insert those fees as per your resolution from the previous adjustment. So they were 375 and
325, Mr Mayor.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy for them to stay at 4 and 6.
so am I.
Me too.
Well, that's 4, Mr Mayor.
Hang on, sorry.
So how long did that last?
Oh, that we amended the fees, like it was a permanent adjustment. Yeah, we amended the budget. Correct. So, sorry, so they're $4. $4.
4 and 6.
I recall, I thought it was under the horse fee, we actually dropped that thing.
No, we didn't pull both.
I got the motion here, what we did last year. It's, that the town common fees be $3.25 per head for cattle and $4 per head a week for horses. Hanson, Peoples, Plum and Moses voted for the motion. Arthur, Dillon and Gleeson voted against the motion.
I'm not doubting for 1 minute, and we divided over it, so you're even allowed to mention our names, Councillor. I'm happy for that.
Yep.
We're probably going to divide again here today, but maybe we might be on the right side this time, Councillor Hart. Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, that's what the resolution was.
So you want to stay with it, ladies? Councillor Gleeson, what are you doing?
That was for last year.
Yeah, last year we amended it back to 325. So we started the year with 4 and 6, the same as is proposed. There was a considerable approach to council and councillors from the users, and it was amended back to 325 and 4.
Yeah. This year, Mr Mayor, the proposal is 4 and 6, not 1 cent cheaper.
No, that wasn't a proposal, that was a carryover from the old budget. We hadn't discussed this.
But it's on the scale here for 4 and 6, and is this what we're discussing, 4 and 6 now?
You're both right, councillors. There's no need for argument. The existing fee, we haven't discussed this, but in our budget presentations, it has always been presented as has been copied from what we adopted last year, not what was amended. You're both correct. So you're wanting to move that we increase it to 4 and 6? Councillor Rogers?
I'm probably in favour of an increase.
The numbers have
I
it.
think I'm happy with 4 and 6.
The numbers have it, but watch for a revisit of this in July.
Yep.
When we get a letter from everybody the same copy, probably copy and paste the letter they wrote to us last year. But that's the way it'll be, so it's staying as is presented. So we're happy with, we've had the conversation around housing, planning and other facilities that were not touched. Equipment is relatively static. Sorry.
For you, Mr. Mayor, we made a change this morning in rural under stock routes travel permits.
Yes.
And we've moved it to statutory and removed, like, we won't put any dollar figure in there. It's 10 cents at the moment.
Yeah, because that's going to change. So I understand why you've moved that to statutory, because the regulation is going to amend the statutory provision, so that will allow us to increase the charge. If it's, so you're going to take the 10 cents out and just leave it at statutory.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
To you, Mr Mayor, because at the moment it is still only 2 cents.
2,
Yes.
and it will increase to 10.
No, I think that was just an increase. It hasn't increased from 2 cents in I don't know how many years.
No, but I think it is. I thought that was why you raised it. So the stock rate review that is undergoing ministerial right now is to increase that, two things: increase the charge and increase to 100% what we keep out of that. Because we currently only keep half of one, we only give 1%, don't we? The other 1% goes to the state. So you're just going to move that to statutory and remove the dollar figure, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Right, councillors, understand that? That way when the law changes on this, we'll change what we keep. Or what we charge, I should say, and what we keep.
So, Mr Mayor, that's just for the travel permits or the adjustment permits as well? Because they're both statutory.
Councillor Mayor's vote.
Is that, okay, so we're removing both. We're moving to statutory, whatever the maximum statutory charge is. But we're staying with 280 and
Well, that was my question, Mr Mayor. Like, does that apply to the travel permit and the adjustment permit, or?
yeah, but not the adjustment permit other than stock routes because there's no statutory amount for that.
Oh, sorry, the third one, yeah, yes, yeah, well, that's commercial. Yeah,
But councillors, I do think if you're staying with $4 for the common, naive to the calls that will come, the adjustment permit for other than stock routes needs to be at least equivalent to what the stock, at least equivalent to what town commons is. It's at 280 here, so that means that the copies of the district get $1.20 cheaper than the hobbies.
But are we, through you, Mr Mayor, are we able to separate cattle, horses and mules as it's statutory? Are they
No.
grouped together?
No, I'm talking about the third one, where it's not on a stock route.
Oh, yeah, right, sorry.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor, you're talking stock route adjustment permit?
No. Go down the bottom, adjustment permit other than stock routes.
Yes.
So Pine Hill Reserve, for example, is not a stock route. We are.
Historically, Mr Mayor, haven't we done that by a tender or negotiation?
We have, but I think that the base rate should be at least equivalent to what we're charging our residents on the common.
Yep.
At least.
And that's cheap. Just
At the very least, that's a debatable point, councillor, but it's not near to charge. I mean, these guys make a fortune out of their cattle. They have lots of them and they're utilising those pastures. I think there's not very many places where we charge this, but surely we can't charge less.
I think we should charge the same, but we can still have by tender, like, because they might get, some
Agree.
people might be willing to pay 8. Some people might be willing to pay 5. Like.
I agree totally. I'm not suggesting we remove the tender process, I'm just suggesting that the base rate, in the event that there isn't multiple tenderers, needs to be at least. Sorry, councillor.
We're in a meeting, but we're having a little discussion. Can I just let everybody know what we're discussing, please?
Well, I'd like it because I don't like it otherwise.
In June, whatever last year, we set a price of 4 and 6 for our animals. And then we went back in July or August, I'm not sure the exact date. Council Peoples will help me. August, and we were over. You and I, we were overruled. It come back to $3.25 and $4. $3.25 for the cattle. Now that should have been implemented in August, September. Have the people in the Commons been charged $3.25 and $4 for this 21-22 financial year?
Paula?
Sorry, councillor, please.
What were they charged for this year?
What have they been charged, $4 or $3.25 for this year?
$3.25.
$3.25.
Yeah, sorry, Tom, I
Okay.
see what you're saying.
Mr. Mayor, these figures were, I went back and looked at where I prepared my budget for last year. And maybe I picked up that sheet where.
You would have, because we amended it outside the budget process. You wouldn't have even been in the room when we amended that. It would have been, it was well outside of finance discussion. So yeah, without anybody having informed you to amend your fees and charges, the officers knew what fee to apply because they were all here when it happened. But yeah, no, it's a simple It's not a mistake even, it's just you've brought forward last year's fees and charges without direction to lower it, so it's not a mistake, it's not your issue.
It's all right, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to get that right, thank you.
Can we go back to,
Getting back to the stock rate
not the
adjustment
stock rate.
permit, what's the stock rate adjustment permit for $2.80 against the adjustment permit for $2.80? Shouldn't they both be $4?
when you're travelling, you've got the statutory rules to follow.
Yeah, right.
The government's got rules about that, but if you lease a reserve that's not a stock route or register a reserve that is not a stock route off us, then you can tender for it, or we can allocate it to somebody on a one first come first served basis, and we are under this maximising, the maximum we can charge for that is $2.80 a horse or a cow or a mule a week. Well, that's not fair when you compare it to what it looks like we're going to adopt for the common when they're on $4 or $6.
I agree with you, Mr Mayor, but it's probably not fair that we adjust our stock routes too at that statutory rate and charge the commons $4.
Well, we have no power over statutory stuff. I totally agree with you. We make that representation every time we get in front of people about stock routes. They are way under, grossly under charged. Hence why people, the big corporates, use them to move cattle. That's the only reason why. It's the cheapest grass in the world. Is the Australian Queensland stock route network.
It's a bit annoying that we've got statutory legislation that says we can only charge them $2.80 and then we charge our own people $4.
Yeah, I agree. I do. I think the difference with those reserves, you can put cattle in them as a bit of a drought or as a bit of a production gain. The stock route generally is people moving through the travel permit stuff, but then yes, the genuine stock route adjustment. Let's face it, half the district use the stock route without adjusting it anyway, so they're paying nothing for it. The locals, and then the cattle get here and there's no grass feed anyway, so apart from the primary route, all of our secondary routes, a substantial portion of them are being grazed by grazers anyway, because we're not maintaining that secondary route. Almost none of it. Oh, I'm happy to leave it at 280. I'm not happy, but I'll leave it there. I'm not going to debate it much longer.
$4.
$4.
$6 for horses, $4.50.
So you want to introduce a new line?
Well,
To be fair, I don't know of anyone who uses.
Mr Mayor, I know that last year, I think a couple of years ago, there was horses from Kingdon and Co and Longreach got a Blackwell Mineral Reserve.
The what?
They were a mineral reserve. A couple of years ago. I know that. So there nearly should be a line for horses as well.
So horses and mules will go to $6 on your, and cattle will go to $4. Well, 40 cents. I wouldn't know. How much do you adjust a sheep for? When's the last time an officer processed an adjustment bill for a sheep? Hasn't, so let's not worry about it. It'll be horse/mule. I also don't know if anyone's processed an invoice for a mule, but let's cover our bases.
And what will we doing with sheep and goats then?
Leaving them as it's presented. Councillor Peoples, I didn't ask you. I
Sorry?
didn't ask you whether you're happy with that.
Oh, Mr Mayor, I'm still with the 325 across the board.
You will flog with it all the same. Right, fees and charges, any further? So I'm ready to put it to the vote as amended. Well, I'm not putting them to the vote, sorry, I'm going to put them to formal debate. So you can debate items 1 through 6. Do I have somebody prepared to move it for the purposes of debate and adoption? Councillor Plum and Councillor Rogers by the voice, seconded. Debate. Councillor Peters, you have a couple of issues I'd suggest you'd want to put on the record here, one around housing and one around town reserves.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to see the housing remain the same as it is this year, as last year. I think that there is widespread debate out there in the community through this last federal election, and it's just ongoing about the cost of living. So I would like to see us take a proactive role there and try and help those that went off us and leave everything as it is for this financial year. That's where I'd like to go with the housing, with the adjustment on the commons we had this last year where we bumped them to $4 and we come back and had a motion that I know was close, went 4-3 to bring it back to $3.25 and $4, and I prefer that remain the same also.
Anything with any of the other items?
No, I think I'm probably comfortable with the rest of that, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gleeson? Any comment, debate?
Mr. Mayor, the housing is an issue for me, but I'm pleased that we've come back to 10% across the board. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson?
I'm happy with the things that are up there, that's why they stand.
Councillor Arthur?
No, Mr Mayor, I just think in the next 12 months, we probably need some policy work around our housing and our common stock.
And the which, sorry, the second one?
Stock on common.
Oh. Councillor Plum?
Yeah, I'm happy with the way this is.
Councillor Roberts?
Agree with that amendments as they are, and I agree with Councillor Arthur about the policy work on council houses.
He may have nominated himself to lead the task force into the Common Policy Review Day.
I didn't agree with that one.
No, I didn't either. That's why I said he can lead the task force on his own. Any further comment? I now close the debate. Those in favour? Against? 6-1. Councillor Peoples voting against. (3.117) debt policy, as is presented. It's not foreshadowed that council intends to borrow for the 23 financial year. You'll see our loan balances as at the 30th of June, 3.3 million, with an estimation of a reduction by 610,000 to a balance of 2.861 million, 30 June 23. All debts as currently on our books to have been repaid by 30 June 2030. Councillor Peters.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to, when you go to the policy, I would just like that we, in Principles B, new loans, council will restrict the purpose of new loans to funding infrastructure assets.
Sorry. Can you
I'm looking at the policy itself, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, I'm winding up.
Okay, in B, in new loans,
Yes.
council will restrict the purpose of new loans to funding infrastructure assets. So that just means infrastructure assets alone, but I probably wouldn't mind also putting a line in there, or for sustainability if required. Just to open it up a bit if we happen to, just need to borrow something to keep our operation going, because all we can do there is borrow something for bricks and mortar. But if we had some reason that, I don't know, we didn't get our bags grant for 12 months, just something along there where we might need a cash flow, I'd just like to see or for sustainability if required, added. Or something along those lines. Or can we change that if required?
Policy, so it can be changed to.
Your policy can change
At any
every
time.
year, so in the foreseeable future, for the next 12 months, you don't need to worry. You worry we might run out of cash, so you might need overdraft facility or something like that.
That's right.
That's not there anyway.
Councillor, I certainly see your intent with absolutely no warning to consider it. I think my initial position would be that inclusion of a sustainability matrix for borrowing in our debt policy could signal to the state that we're concerned we are going to run out of money. And if we are concerned about that, then signalling that is quite valid. Looking at the 10-year projections and more realistically at the 3-year projections, I don't think we are on trajectory to run out of cash. In fact, I think we're returning surplus in the right direction. I think if anything, because we are covering our debt repayments well in front of our constrained cash, that as each year goes by in our forward estimates, we're less and less likely to need debt funding from a sustainability perspective. I think I actually think 2 years ago I would have been the first to jump on board with that, but I'm really impressed with the fiscal acumen of this council to put us in a position where we aren't no longer staring into that abyss. We've seen the bottom of it coming back up again. And the ability to amend policy even more frequently than annually if required, I think could allow us that, should an unforeseen circumstance that may require, whether it's overdraft financing or perhaps financing to cover a contribution to a grant that we may have originally budgeted for out of internal, we could reposition ourselves with respect to debt very quickly, should we be required to. But I think at this stage, that very simplistic document probably shows this council's intent pretty well. We're only going to borrow money to cover assets, purchases, if at all. And to be fair, go down to point 3, we're not actually talking about borrowing 1 cent in the next 10 years. So I don't know that, anyway, that's my thoughts. But I'm thinking we're going all right.
Mr Mayor, I'm not saying we're not.
No, but I don't want the state to misconstrue where we're going by thinking we might need to borrow to cover operations.
And I'm probably not keen to send that signal either. But I was thinking about this myself. Would I have a policy for myself that I would only have that in there? And I wouldn't.
No.
But take your points, and I'm not strong on it, but I was just looking at that and thought, well, we may need money more than for just assets. But I'm okay with changing the policy and doing something different in the track at a later date. So
I think it's a valid point. I'm going to open to other councillors because we've in previous years just adopted a very consistent debt policy approach. But I mean, to understand the need for borrowings and appetite to borrow is very informed, needs to be informed to make this policy as rigorous as it needs to be and give an intent to officers whether we do or don't borrow. So I think I'm happy to hear from other councillors on this. In light of your comments. Doesn't look like I'm going to. Right.
Mr Mayor, I'm happy with it as it is. Oh, I understand Councillor People's point.
Any other questions about the debt policy as it's presented? Okay. Do I have a move up to adopt? Councillor Arthur, second, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Peoples, any further?
no.
Those in favour? 7-0. So, mate, 3-1-18. There, councillors, you can't possibly, no one can move that fast. There will be some alterations to these reports as a result of decisions you have made previously today.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. At this stage, there'll be only one with rental income.
Could you direct us to where that will be, please? Which goal? Community housing, so page 2. Is that right? Rent, community housing is budgeted at 58,550, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, council housing, it's under governance and
Governance, council housing, okay. Rentals at 286, and you expect that to come back by?
rough estimate would be around 50,000 is what it is, Mr. Mayor.
So don't take that figure to the bank, councillors, but just be aware this report you're adopting will change slightly as a result of the decision that we've taken, so they'll just move those figures around. When you see the final reports come out after amendments, they will alter minutely from what you're adopting today, but in line with your other resolution, I don't think it's in order to adopt what is presented. I said it's not in line, didn't I? Sorry. I mean, it would be in order. It would be in order to adopt this because we've approved the amendment to revenue by adjusting our fees and charges.
Adopted as an
Yeah.
And yes, Mr. Mayor, but it won't be as high as 50,000. It's rough estimated. Looking at what we changes.
Anything else you want us to see here, Simon? In the revenue and expenditure before we go to capital works?
Hasn't been any significant change.
All right. Capital works, Councillor?
Can I just ask a question? Just some clarity for me, please. Is in the Goal 1 communities, and you've got 23, 24, 25 budget, and there's a figure there of 7,660,000 for community grants in 23.
We've been Pearl, Buckle, Pearl.
Which one is that? Sorry, Mr. Mayor.
I'm looking for it too.
Yeah, there's no numbers there, I can't.
Capital grants.
Oh, capital.
So when we have a $2 million surplus in 23 and a $5 million deficit in 24, that's just due to the pool.
Yes, Mr.
Well, I
Mayor.
can't give you a page, sorry. There's no number on it.
When we move to our capital worksheet, Mr. Mayor, we have, that can be seen there that we have only two projects for next 2 years highlighted in them. So most of the, under communities, there's only 2 projects for 24. There's one for 24 and one for 25 budgeted in this budget. So that's why, and that is also not funded because we're not sure what sort of funding we will be receiving next year. So this 7 million includes 6.4 million of grant money for the pool.
And where the grants expended is not shown in there to offset it. But we get the grant in this goal, but where we actually then spend it is shown else.
It shows in the cash flows under the.
Yeah. So it sort of makes it look like there's a surplus in communities of 2.2 million, but which there is technically, but we spend that money on contracts and goods and services in another area. Is that what you're saying? It's represented the expenditure in a different section of the financials.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, for the budget exercise, it has to be there, but when we do the 3 yearly budget, income, expense and all that, we take these things into account and make adjustments so when they move into those sheets.
Okay.
This is to show the whole
So,
budget, it's a support report.
so that we're not budgeting for any significant capital grants, Councillor People's point, and then we're looking at a loss of 5.2 million in these 2 goals over the next 2 years, and that's in this purest case, it's because we're not expecting to receive grants of that size.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, in communities, we will be making about 5 million losses.
$1 million, which is depreciation.
So really, the outgoing figure here on the pool's got to come in somewhere else.
It does.
That's what you're saying, yeah, okay.
So this is a support report which flows back into your actual budget documents for 3-year and 10-year. So these adjustments are made there to show them in the right sizes, Mr. Mayor.
We haven't closed the building, have we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Capital works spreadsheet. This is in line with what has been presented multiple times. Hasn't amended in either of the last 3 budget workshops. Except that there may be some work in progress carried over. This is is that correct, Samir? So there could be projects that are not completed that will get added to this spreadsheet when we see it at the July meeting, correct? Or the August meeting?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, anything that has been, that is not completed would be carried forward into our progress reports for our council meetings, but this is solely for
This year's budget planning process, because some of those projects will drop off as completed and others will be added.
Yes,
And others will flow through.
any carried forward or deferred projects would be added to this sheet within our council meeting.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, you're just going a bit quick for me. I just got to flick through these pages to get through some of these other areas, but in the regional events section, which I can't give you a page, sorry, but
I don't think I'm that far along yet. I think you're going a bit quick for me.
capital grants,
No, capital
Capital
projects.
works.
We're at capital works for a bit, and then we'll go to special operating, and then we'll go to community donations, and then we'll go to community council events.
sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm getting in front of you.
First time in 2.5 years, I'd agree with you. You are. So capital works first, please. Anything? Right. Special operating costs. Significant addition here, for the purposes of those watching along, is that we have budgeted a figure to subsidise to the value of 50% a wheelie bin or household collection bin replacement program this financial year only. It hasn't been extended forward into the out years of the budget, so it'll be a once. At this stage, we're budgeting for that to be once off. We're estimating or budgeting for a gross figure of $32,000. That figure could be adjusted. The Director of Works is not here, but the bin audits that are being undertaken by the contractors is showing a substantially higher number of bins as he rejoins the chamber than was originally foreshadowed. So we worked on the 1,200 bins, I think. That number is that right, Simon? We worked on 1,200 collections and replacing 800 of them. That's right. So given that the bin audit is detecting higher numbers, we may see that our budget may have been a little bit conservative, a little bit under what is required, but we'll get a handle on that in coming meetings and if need be we can lift it. At this stage we haven't got the evidence to go by other than that J.J. Richards audit, which conflicts with the tender document that we put out.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'm not advocating for a change in this, we'll just stick with this, but our policy on this will be 50%. It does have a cap there of 32,000, but if we're clearly going to increase that, if we're going to breach that, then we can bring back to council to increase the 32,000 figure, so we maintain the 50%, because you won't know, if you limit it to the dollars figure instead of the percentage, you won't know how to apportion it to make sure you've got some up your sleeve, given the numbers could be a little bit rubbery. So if we work at 50% and then we get to 3/4 of the way through the year and we spend out 32,000, we can approve an additional expenditure to cover those people who may come late to the party. Or council's at its liberty to say, no, we've hit the budget, if you're late, too bad, you pay 100%. That's a decision to be made down the track. Community support donations total at 181,000. We got any indication that the Outback Futures Community Wellbeing 75,000? We have not had an indication from the state that will be a matched funding. Like this year, that 75,000 came direct from the state, and we just passed it on because that's the purpose of that particular scheme. We haven't seen anything on that to suggest that will happen. So councillors, just be aware that we're not budgeting to receive that 75,000 at this stage. We're just budgeting to spend it. Given the roll-up reported to me today by Damien and a number of our, well, certainly in Alpha, and the Director of Central West Health told me we had good numbers in Buckhall. Well, she said it was a valuable session and there's some good sideline discussions. Jenny, were you aware of anything? You got anything down there? So the most recent events anyway have had some strong support.
To Miss Mayor, yes, and I wasn't there the whole time. Councillor Rogers was there the whole time. I had other engagements, so I came in the interim, and the executive assistant was there. I thought it was a fairly strong support, yes, considering there was other stuff going on. Yeah.
Bit quiet in Jericho. Councillor Robbins.
Yes, it was, but it was very well worth the conversation with Jericho.
Yep.
They will do a full report of all 5 towns, but yeah, there's a few things that we can talk about next week.
Right, well, without going into too much detail, just pointing out that for you to be aware of. Now, is this the report you wanted to discuss? The next one, council events.
No, Mr Mayor, it's back where I said it was.
Where?
It's back in community events goals and $10,000 in costing towards the Harry Redford.
Community events.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think council people are still talking about section A, the budget revenue and expenditure.
That's right.
There's a section in there with the regional events which has Tree Knowledge Festival, Harry Redford reunion. I had it before and then I've...
Oh, well, it is in this report as well, sorry. But it's drilled, that whole thing is broken out in a big way on that page. See?
It's $10,000 cost.
Yep.
I can get back to it now and find it. For the 3 years towards Harry Redford. We're not doing anything. So why is there a cost figure in there?
We probably can't do anything if we don't allocate some money to it, though. I guess like the officers have just continued having some money sit there to, in case something.
In case we do something.
Yeah.
It's
So-
page 71 of the agenda. Digital.
Yeah, so, but it's also blown up further.
Yeah.
That section is reproduced. Section B drills down to the $10,000 there as well.
So, yeah, that's through you, Mr. Mayor, that support report covers our regional events, our community events and all that stuff around events. It's a breakdown for that then.
Yeah. So I was going to discuss all of them individually now, councillor, when we're at it, section D. So there's the community events, like Australia Day, Clean Up Australia Day, Mad Bag, Garden Expo, the garden competition, all fully funded by us. And then you have the major events, Harry Redford Cattle Drive, 10,000, Golf Masters, 4,000, we're committed to that. That happens in a few weeks. It's just remember it carries over the 2nd of July, so we had the funding. We've already agreed to do it, but the money's in next year's budget. The Tree of Knowledge Festival, 20,000, and the Bush Councils Convention of 14,000. So it's the two that are up for debate are the Tree of Knowledge and the Harry Redford Cattle Drive. Personally, on the Harry Redford Cattle Drive, I think we should leave something there in the event that the committee.
I'm comfortable with that, Mr Mayor, leaving that there, but I was just wondering why there was 10,000 for 3 years in a row back in the other section.
I reckon that's been the case for a while. It just keeps carrying forward without being spent.
Okay.
And Tree of Knowledge Festival, 20,000 in direct community support, effectively is what that is, whether it's a little bit of in-kind but predominantly cash offset. Is that enough?
Is that what it was this year? 30. It was 30, I thought it was 30.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was. I'm sure it was 30. Yeah.
And how much was interest in it?
Not 30. You know what our expenditure to date is? We added 5 to it at the last meeting. Maybe put it back to 30 and then if there's, because there's talk of a few new events, the group's proactive, they were to be meeting Monday night, they're now going to meet tonight.
Pretty positive meeting the other night, wasn't it? There's a lot there.
Wednesday night.
Is it tomorrow? Sorry, Councillor Rogers and Jenny have corrected me here, it is Wednesday night.
Yeah, I think it should stay 30, Mr Mayor.
Yeah. The figures I haven't updated for that.
I think that gives us a little bit of room to manoeuvre moving forward if we wish to pick up a new initiative that a future committee might pick up. So if we can amend that. Sorry, so I'm going to do that. 92,500 total by increasing the tree knowledge to 20 to 30 from 20. And then there's some cultural events listed there, which we have discussed. Are you up to that? If everyone's got to that, we have that page now, so you've seen all of them that are listed there: Christmas lights competitions, facility openings, volunteers functions, you've all got that, which is an expansion, Councillor Peoples, of the detail that's in that further. It blows it up here. It can be just on your digital copies, it's the page before your plant replacement, which is where we'll go now if you're happy with council events. Plant replacements. Questions here? Substantive movement in plant here or alteration would be the transfer of or upgrading of 2 mowers to the tri-deck mowers with a wider cut and the flexibility to use in a variety of positions that we've discussed. So hence the deer turnover price for 2 of those. And a couple of trucks.
Mr Mayor, the mowers, is that right? Because the 4220 and 4319, our intention is to buy the same new mowers, but the replacement costs are different?
No, I think it's 4220 and 4108. The plan there was for Buckle and Alpha to trial those 2 tri-decks, not Buckle and Joe.
Sorry, that description is the current.
That's what's currently there.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I've got you now.
They will transition to
Yeah,
it.
and that's why, in the budget it's 50 and 50 for Barkey Alpha.
Correct.
Even though the description is the old one. Okay.
I think the position of a lot of the ground level staff is they'd like to stick with the Toro / Kubota, but there is a availability issue where perhaps John Deere might. So there's a yet to be held finalised discussion on the type of replacement, but it's the 4220 and 4108 that will be replaced.
No, I just got confused because the detailed description is of what we have now for replacement, not what we're looking to buy in that case.
We wouldn't have got a market for any of these units, happens to have a whole process.
Correct. Anything here, Simon? The bus.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
The bus, sorry.
Is the, through you, is the Director of Works happy with the plant description of plant replacement? Like we're not replacing graders, backhoes. We are replacing one excavator, not replacing, we're purchasing it. We are replacing another excavator, not yet. Have we got enough equipment on the ground?
Through you, Mr Mayor, we're still looking at, as far as I understand right now, based on our current load of works, hiring is required, and without overcommitting or not understanding what might be our commitments in the future. I think satisfied with what we've got, but personally still in the stage of reviewing our current structure. So I'll know more, but obviously I take the point that satisfied with what we've got for the moment. I wouldn't recommend any changes at this stage.
I think just once we adopt this, we can't.
I understand, and I see that as that's the rub for certainly the next 12 months at least.
I think probably in terms of planning going into the bus, because obviously there's a change over there or a new bus there. The one thing I would like to see a little bit of rigour done is on the useful life that we've allocated of hours and years. My personal opinion is it's a fraction long. And we're seeing gearbox transmission replacements with a year to go or 1,000 hours to go at a cost of 15,000, 20,000, but we're not seeing a return on trade of 15,000 to 20,000. So there was a move about 4 years ago to push from 8 years, 8,000 hours to 10 years, 10,000 hours perhaps. Not quite me on them figures, but there was a couple of years movement there. I'd like, it may still be valid, but I think we should have a bit of an interrogation about what we're expending on those machines in the back 2 years of their life. And if that is a problem, then we can perhaps trim up that to ensure better productivity.
Well, I think we've got a bit of work to look at what our current works programs are, both maintenance and capital works. Can we utilise our plan? What's the split between contract and our own? And then get our workforce planning right so it's the whole picture instead of just one or the others. And if our asset management plans are robust enough, that should indicate turnover and utilisation. So we're a little bit off getting that TE from what I've seen.
And just on the bus, Jenny, what's happening, so Matt, what's happening here is you're selling a 10-seater and replacing it with a 12-seater, is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And the 22-seater's going, is that right?
Yes, Mr.
Hello? That's what we had discussed, so just checking we were right. Okay, any questions on plant or no one question community events under Council of Peoples? Everyone's happy with that? Sorry, Paul.
Can I just ask what's happening with 6148, the Prado? Doesn't have a replacement cost.
Motor vehicle, the Prado, yes.
Care services one.
Supervisor Prado.
Got to have a car. That's what it is, that's the work supervisor.
To you, Mr. Mayor, 6261, which is the CEO car. It hasn't got a replacement either. Are we making what we've done a permanent replacement, Mr. Mayor? What's happening at the moment?
I would suggest not, because CHSP need it. Someone in that coordinating role needs a car. We can't get rid of the senior work supervisor in Aramac and the CEO's car.
Not replacing them.
We can get rid of the CEO's car, but transfer one away, and then so it's 2 out and none in.
None added in, Mr. Mayor.
There is
There's a new CHSP.
the CHSP for Barkey and Aramac, SUVs.
Oh, okay.
So does that alleviate that issue, that the Prado that CHSP is currently using, is it going to Aramac?
That's the CEO's car at the moment.
Yeah, there's one on, we're awaiting one though, that's on a warranty claim. So I'm actually driving the CEO's car. It reverts, then the mayor's car comes back into the fleet and that other car could go back to senior work, that's what it is, sorry. So we can reallocate internally, we've got that, yes. We're not down, we're currently down a car, which is why we can trade one, because when the new car comes to replace it's going to become the CEO's car. I'm going to stick with the CEO's car, is I think the plan at this stage, the old CEO's car. And that SUV that we're utilising goes back to replace that one that can be traded. That must be the oldest of them. I'm struggling to remember the meeting on this.
You probably bought a new one, this is just disposal of the old one.
No, we did.
So, don't have a history of all.
You'll have to, sorry, Jenny.
To you, Mr. Mayor, with that in mind, how you've just said then, so 6261 isn't going to be sold for 40,000? Because that's the one you're currently driving, 643 XVT.
So that is correct, that is the plant number, that's right.
Yeah, so that one,
No, it won't be sold. It'll stay in the fleet.
yeah, so that's probably just going to be. amount of 40,000.
Correct. It wouldn't be traded anyway. It's only got 140,000 Ks on it, it's only about 4-year-old, so it definitely wouldn't be being reduced. So 626.1, so Matt, we'll draw a line through it, which will increase the bottom line by 40 grand there. Or decrease, sorry. So yeah, and the new, I'm still not convinced those new CHSP cards are going to be able to go to the director of CHSP. They must have a use for them. Or is that what the new bug? What's bug called in CHSP?
That must be,
We do have a card for care services, isn't it?
Yeah, Shane's using it now.
That's a long problem.
Yeah. So I think that we were selling 6148 and
Reallocating a card.
a car there and buying an extra car for CHSP.
Right.
That is what was happening in that schedule there.
Yep. The Shane's card will revert, it'll go back over to the senior work supervisor. The HSP get the new one because it need not be a Prado, it can be a smaller car.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
And, but you get 6261, which is now known as the mayor's card, stays. It won't require trade. No. No, because we've got one, you'll not look at the paperwork, but look at the physical, we're one card down now, but when it turns up, we'll be right.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So that's what was happening. 6148 was getting sold and we were moving the care services car to work supervisor and buying 2 new cars.
That's right. Buy one new car. Oh, 2 new cars for CHSP. Yes. Clear as crystal. Councillor, Eagles, Gleeson. Just tipper trucks. I would imagine there's going to be a substantial wait. The more promptly we order them, the better. Nothing happens fast. Righto. Somebody prepared to move those financial reports to receive? Councillor Hanson seconded. Councillor Arthur debate. Those in favour? 7-0. Right. All budget adoption. Just one after, were we coming back to something for you?
I was, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry.
3.1.4.
There's something you foreshadowing, I forgot to ask the question. You think we weren't going back to it?
Oh, yes, it was the non-step in
B&E.
between D&E and intensive accommodation, even though the
sorry.
base minimum.
I've forgotten I was bringing it up earlier. There's been a lot going on in the interim.
Would you like to foreshadow a movement? Would you like to move an amendment to that schedule to move category 65 to 3.991, which is 0.4 of a point higher than category 64?
At this point in time, yes, Mr. Mayor, but
You've got to amend today.
yes, yeah, but for a note for myself for next year's budget to have a look at, why those increments are, not consistent, or they're not mathematically increasing consistently. Excuse me.
So it's actually 313. You wouldn't be so lucky to have Councillor Arthur having moved that one.
I did, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, it was already.
Okay. Councillor Arthur.
Because I already made a change to one of the other categories. Or there was a round in.
Procedurally, Really?
You have to remove an amendment.
Yeah, I think it would be more in order for you to move to amend resolution 313.
Yep.
So a resolution down the bottom. Maybe back to where we are, sorry, in the run sheet.
Yep.
Councillor Arthur moves that we amend the differential general rates levy schedule to alter category 65.
Hold on a sec, please, otherwise you're going to have to repeat yourself altogether.
Is it 64, 65 and 66? Or just?
It's just the one that's doubled up. Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, yes, councillor Arthur.
Moves to amend resolution number whatever.
313.
It's item, but not
Yep.
resolution.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll reword it later, yeah.
We'll do that later, whatever the resolution ends up being. Councillor moves to amend resolution 313 to alter category 65 so that the rate in the dollar shall now be 3.991 dollars. That would be, isn't it? Oh, yeah, it would have. Yep.
Rate in the dollar cents.
Yeah, in brackets after dollar cents. That's the heading of that column. Councillor Arthur has moved an amendment. Is to that resolution. Is there a seconder? Councillor Plum. Is there a debate? I put the motion. Those in favour? Amendment is carried. 7-0. Correct.
The big one.
But it's good that we did it before this.
Yep.
And it'll actually have no material change on your projections because we don't currently have anything in that category, do we?
No. So we've affected no one.
But we're prepositioning ourselves for a big change in the future. All right, the budget. Councillors, would any of you like to speak to any or all of the budget documents that are now presented to you for adoption? Do I have a mover for the budget, for these statements of income and expenditure and statement of financial positions, forecasts and the statement in the total value of change in rates and utility charges? Councillor Rogers, seconded from Councillor Arthur. Debate? Not that today has necessarily been 7-zip all day, and not that there's been total consensus on everything, but I think, councillors, it's been a well thought out budget for the level of maturity that we have been able to bring in and around our decision making. We've possibly making some slight tweaks and changes that councillors have foreshadowed as we move forward, but I think the underlying elements of the budget are strong for a council of our sophistication currently around asset management and financial positioning. The councillors have displayed an extreme sensitivity, which is a good thing, around cost of living, and whilst pragmatically maintaining our workforce and job security for them is also fundamental to ensuring the livability of our community. So a small rise in the minimum general rate, but yet a substantial charge increase in the general rate, not only historically but comparatively across local governments, is It's helping to underpin the financial security moving forward, which you seek to adopt today. It's a tough budget. It's a very tough budget. It's the second tough budget in a row. This time our utility charge is not moving, but by moving rates again so quickly, it is tough. But it's necessary through, to be fair, years of inactivity around this. Also, lack of opportunity given the extreme drought and low commodity prices that have smacked our major industry for so long, and the reluctance to add yet another cost burden on them. This year, unlike last year when we had winners and losers in our rate movement due to the property revaluation, we will only have a uniform increase. So everybody pays that 4.95% in terms of real rates more. In a lot of cases, that still won't restore some ratepayers to what they were paying 2 financial years ago. However, it is yet again another increase on top of the 17-18% that some ratepayers copped last year. So it's tough. It is a tough budget. I think you should shy away from the fact that you've made some tough calls, notwithstanding a little bit of movement around the edges on things like common and stock route charges. They will be debated ad nauseum. I think the structural stuff is sound. I thank the officers for their work. It is their job to put recommendations in front of us for things like housing, and it is our job to make the final decision on them. So the fact that we haven't necessarily wholly endorsed what was put forward is not a negative reflection. You've presented the options, and we've taken an option that we think is the best fit for council and for our communities. So with that, if there's no more comment on the budget, the budget statements to the vote. Those in favour? Against? Carried. I don't know that we need to start this resolution before lunch. Is lunch coming in or are we going down? Yes, that's a 5-minute walk down there. I haven't closed the meeting yet, councillors. Does anyone else want to add to what I just said? Like, it is a tough budget. There'll be no other local government in Queensland lift their rates by 5% 2 years in a row, ever. Down here. But like last year, we saw councils going with less than 2% even. So there might be some do it this year because of that, but I just think it's important that in the narrative with people, when we didn't have any negative commentary last year, it's important in the narrative when we're talking about the budget to people that we explain to them that we have been in a perilous financial position and we're still not out of it. We're doing what we can. I don't think there's much more room to move on rates. I think we've hit it in 2 budgets and we've been able to do it in a year where commodity prices are okay and we've leveraged that revaluation probably to our maximum advantage. I don't know personally the scope to do this again next year, so I think we need to consolidate and you haven't expected that in your 4-year projections either. You've returned us to 2% increases, have you? Is that right, in terms of general rates?
Yes, Mr.
So our 4 budgets are worked on modest increases, not substantial. I think the other thing, Councillor Peebles has talked about this a fair bit, we've shrunk our plant replacement down substantially on historical, and Councillor Gleeson and the Director of Works have touched on this. We're just going to make sure that's not to our detriment, and our capital works are fully funded pretty well.
I can probably add to in the fact that I haven't been here through all your preparation, what I've seen from council and from staff is a genuine commitment to look for where we can find efficiencies. So I hope that one staff member here that hasn't actually really put some thought into what they're presenting to council. So it's early days, but I know the work that they've put in and the commitment, and I think from my perspective, they need to pat on the back because they've worked really hard to get what they've put in front. So I think we've got a good workforce that really care about the community as well and want to present to council the best information you can have so you can make the best decisions. So I think it's a good result.
In my press release and covering note for the budget, which I never write until you've adopted it because I'm always nervous of substantial change, I won't be repeating the rhetoric that I did last year around hemorrhaging cash, because I think that stopped. I won't be using the rhetoric around this is a tough budget in terms of utilities, because we've now got them to where we need to restore some balance and cost offsets. But I will be repeating what I just said. We're cognizant of the fact that it's a big increase, certainly doubled in some cases on top of an 18% increase for some ratepayers. But it's what we need to do to ensure we can insulate against the cost of living or the cost price pressures we face in undertaking basic maintenance on their roads, looking after the showgrounds, facilities, maintaining banks and post offices in those communities where we do. None of those costs are getting smaller. If we're to continue to provide the services that our ratepayers expect/require, unfortunately, a couple of years of revenue increases like this have been required. I'll probably also point out that in our forward budgets we're expecting to be able to soften that approach, but I won't commit us to that. All good? Working with that much?